You open your laptop. The assignment is right there. You know exactly what to do. You've done harder things before, but instead, you check one notification, then another, then a video, and suddenly, it's been 47 minutes. Now there's that quiet thought in the back of your head. If I'm actually smart, why am I doing this? That question is where this story begins, because procrastination isn't random, and it's definitely not laziness. The students who struggle with it most are often the ones who understand things the fastest, the ones teachers call bright, the ones everyone assumes will figure it out, and yet, they're the ones staring at a blank page at 2:13 a.m. So what's going on here? Why does intelligence of all things seem to backfire? To understand that, stop treating procrastination like a time problem. It's not just poor planning. It's not just distraction. It's not even discipline. It's about how your brain evaluates effort and risk. And smart students play a dangerous game with both. It usually starts early. You're in school, maybe middle school, maybe earlier. You don't need to try that hard. You listen once. You get it. You study a little. You score high. No struggle, no friction, no real failure. At first, this feels like an advantage, and it is. But slowly, a rule forms underneath it. Not one you choose, one your brain quietly builds. If I'm smart, things should feel easy. That idea sits there unchallenged, because for a long time it works, until it doesn't. The moment things get harder, the equation changes. Higher classes, tougher exams, real competition. Now effort is required. Now confusion shows up. Now you don't understand everything immediately. And this is where most people push through. But smart students face a strange psychological problem. Effort starts feeling like evidence against their identity. If something takes time, if something feels difficult, then maybe they're not as smart as they thought. And that possibility is uncomfortable. So the brain does something clever. It avoids the test entirely. That's procrastination. Not because the task is hard, but because starting creates a situation where your identity is at risk. If you don't start, you can't fail. If you can't fail, you can keep believing you're capable. It's a protective move, and it works, at least in the short term. But there's another layer, something quieter, more mechanical. Let's talk about time. Most students underestimate how long things take, but smart students do something different. They compress time. They think, I've done similar things before. I'll do this quickly. So instead of starting early, they delay. They wait for the right moment. The moment when focus is perfect, energy is high, pressure is just enough. It feels efficient, almost strategic. But here's the math they don't see. If a task realistically takes 6 hours, and you believe you can do it in 3, then you delay for 3 hours. Now there's no buffer, no room for mistakes, no time to revise. And when things don't go perfectly, stress spikes. Now the brain is under pressure. And under pressure, the brain doesn't optimize for quality. It optimizes for escape. So what happens next? Usually, the student doubles down on the story. They tell themselves they're just tired, just busy, just waiting for the right mood. And that sounds reasonable for a while. But the pattern keeps repeating. The assignment comes again. The deadline comes again. The blank page comes again. And now the brain is no longer dealing with one isolated task. It's dealing with a memory. The memory of delay. The memory of stress. The memory of barely surviving the last one. That memory matters more than most students realize. Because the brain doesn't evaluate future tasks in a vacuum. It predicts them based on past experience. So if every task has felt like a late-night rescue mission, the next task will feel threatening before it even begins. That is how procrastination becomes automatic. Not because the work changed, because the expectation changed. At that point, the student often develops a strange relationship with time. Time is no longer neutral. It becomes an enemy, something to waste until panic arrives, something to fear once panic does arrive, something to constantly misread. And the result is a life that feels more chaotic than it should. Even when the student is intelligent, even when the student is capable, even when the student knows better. Here's the hidden social side. Smart students are often praised early, praised for being gifted, praised for being natural, praised for making things look effortless. That praise feels good, but it creates a trap, because now effort becomes invisible. And if effort is invisible, struggle feels embarrassing. You don't just want to do well, you want to do well without looking like you had to try too hard. That sounds harmless, but it changes behavior. The second a task feels like it will require visible effort, your brain resists it. Not because effort is bad, because effort threatens the image of being naturally capable, naturally sharp, naturally above the struggle. And this is where the irony becomes obvious. The very students most capable of deep work often avoid the one thing deep work requires most: beginning badly. Not perfectly, not confidently, badly. Rough first draft, confused first step, unimpressive start. That's what real work usually looks like. But the smart student wants the work to reflect the self. So they postpone until the self feels ready. And the self rarely feels ready. Because readiness is not a feeling. It's usually the result of movement. Here's the uncomfortable math. If you start late, you need more intensity. If you need more intensity, you need more stress. If you need more stress, you need more urgency. If you need more urgency, you create more pressure. And the more pressure you need, the more fragile your system becomes. That's the loop. Start late, feel pressure, perform fast, survive, repeat. It looks efficient, but it's expensive, emotionally, cognitively, physically. And over time, it changes what kind of student you become. Because a student who works in constant emergency mode does not build the same mental muscles as a student who works steadily. Steady work builds tolerance. It builds patience with confusion. It builds trust in process. Procrastination teaches the opposite. It teaches urgency dependence. It teaches discomfort avoidance. It teaches the brain that confusion is a signal to retreat, not explore. That's why smart procrastinators often know the answer in theory, but still cannot move in practice. They understand the task. They don't trust the beginning. And that is a very different problem. Think bigger than homework. Think about skill, writing better, speaking better, building something meaningful, actually becoming excellent. Those things do not happen in bursts of panic. They happen through repetition, through ugly drafts, through boring consistency, through days that feel ordinary. And that is exactly what procrastination hates, because procrastination wants drama. It wants emotional activation. It wants the deadline. It wants the adrenaline spike. But excellence is mostly quiet, which means a student trained by procrastination often chases the feeling of productivity instead of the reality of progress. That is a dangerous swap. You can feel busy and still stand still. You can feel stressed and still avoid the core work. You can even feel smart while slowly losing momentum. That's the hidden risk, not stupidity. Drift. A slow drift away from deep effort and toward last-minute performance. And once that drift becomes normal, the costs show up everywhere. Higher anxiety, lower trust in yourself, more self-disgust after each delay, more dependence on guilt, more fantasies about becoming disciplined tomorrow. Tomorrow becomes a personality, a place where everything will finally change. But tomorrow is also where procrastination sends unfinished promises to disappear, quietly, without a fight. So maybe the real question is not how to become more productive. Maybe it is how to become willing to look less naturally smart for a while. How to accept awkward beginnings. How to start before you feel ready. How to let the work expose the truth instead of protecting an image. Because until that happens, the brain will keep choosing the easier lie. Delay now, panic later, protect the identity, repeat. And the strange thing is, most smart students don't even hear the lie as a lie. It sounds practical, it sounds familiar, it sounds like them, which is exactly why it works, and exactly why it is so hard to escape. Now the real question is this: if being smart has taught you how to avoid failure, what would it take to teach you how to tolerate the truth?